So, in the biggest plot twist mankind has ever seen, second only to Zhongli's reveal, Neuvillette has finally come out of the proverbial closet and revealed himself to be the Hydro Sovereign.
You may be closer to the truth than you think.
Oh? And what are you thinking? The dragon of... what? Huh?
Please do not be so surprised.
However, despite this shocking revelation, this interaction between the Traveler and Neuvillette let us in on a lot more than I think even me Hoyo were intending. For instance, in this short little piece of dialogue, we gained knowledge on the first Descender, the purpose of Gnosis, clues on who Furina is, or rather isn't, and interestingly enough, who won the war between the Primordial one and the second who came, which in turn tells us who currently runs Neuvillette. Oh, they were probably intending for this, I don't know why I said that, but anyway, the first thing it clued us in on is that something is up with the Hydro Archon Furina. And notice I said Furina and not Focalors, because so far as I can tell, you would think the name Focalors in Fontaine is tantamount to Voldemort with how little it's been said in the story thus far. Through 4 acts of the Archon quest, the name Focalors has been said just 5 times, and I mean 2 of them were by Furina herself!
I am the Hydro Archon of Fontaine, Focalor, the god of justice who is loved and adored by many.
For reference, the name Barbados was said 15 times in just 2 acts. I stopped counting Rex Lapis after they said his name 17 times in the first quest of the first act. Not even the whole act, just the first quest of the first act, they said his name 17 times. They just get horny saying his name in Leeway. I mean, I guess to be fair, he died, but like, come on man, move on. For Inazuma, I used the name the Raiden Shogun because that's her title rather than her name. There, they said it 23 times through the first act, and in all of Act 1 for Sumeru, the name Lesser Lord Kusanali was said 41 times. So again, compared to the 5 times Focalors was said through 4 acts, something seems incredibly off. Further adding to this mystery surrounding the Hydro Archon Furina is Neuvillette's reaction when asked if he's the real Hydro Archon.
Whoa. It can't be that you're the real Hydro Archon, right? But that's just a speculation on our part, though. You can't tell us? Then that's okay.
He seems unsure of how to answer it, and in the end, he doesn't. His unwillingness to answer this question is interesting, given it would appear he'd sooner admit to being the Hydro Sovereign before answering any questions regarding the identity of the Hydro Archon. If Furina being the Hydro Archon was just as simple as Furina is the Hydro Archon Focalors, he would have been able to answer this question without issue, but the fact of the matter is, he didn't, meaning there's a lot more going on than that. Anyway, one last thing before I move on from this topic. When counting the amount of times the name Focalors was said, I noticed Furina seems to tout her divinity more than any other Archon. Well, actually, scratch that. Saying she does it more than any other Archon would be disingenuous given no other Archon does that. To me anyway, it seemed as if she was putting on a show in an effort to get people to believe that she's a god. But when put under the trials and tribulations of one, she crumbles. Hence why Arlecchino dog-walks Furina, or why Furina constantly backs out of fights. So far as we know, she hasn't met any of the other members of the 7, so it could be that she's simply playing the part of what she thinks a god to be. Even Arlecchino was taken aback by Furina, stating that while serving under the Tsaritsa, she knows how a real Archon conducts themselves.
I am a servant of Her Majesty the Tsaritsa. Over my years of service, I've learned how a real Archon conducts and carries themselves. Whether Udex Neuvillette or Furina, neither fits the bill. It's hard to imagine either of them as the Archon.
So, could be something, could be nothing, who knows. Anyway, moving on to Neuvillette, his admission to being the Hydro Sovereign came with a bit of history regarding Teyvat that's worth looking into.
They say that when the first usurper arrived on Teyvat, they seized a part of the dragon's power. Today, that stolen power is the basis of the Archon's authorities.
I believe this is actually the first time the Primordial one was mentioned in the main storyline in this game, which is questionable by miHoYo, but anyway, for those unaware, the Primordial one, or Thanes, was the first Descender onto Teyvat, and he, with the 4 Shining Shades he created of himself, defeated the native 7 sovereigns, including a past version of Neuvillette, to gain control of Teyvat, hence why Neuvillette calls him the first usurper. Cause he usurped him, get it? I'll move on. In the interaction between Neuvillette and the Traveler, Neuvillette says something that doesn't really make sense to me. Neuvillette admits he doesn't know much about the ancient history. However, he already knows enough to warrant a death sentence from Celestia. The only reason he knows even this much is because he started off this claim with, "they say." My question is, who is they? I ask this because Celestia desperately doesn't want any of this ancient information known. They banned the book Before Sun and Moon, which described this exact war, and later sentenced Orobashi to death just for reading it. So in theory, the only people who should even know that the first usurper exists were the ones who were there thousands of years ago. That includes the Primordial ones, the Four Shades, the Seven Sovereigns, and finally the Dragon King Nibelung. Of those, obviously Celestia isn't telling him anything, and it was said that the Seven Sovereigns who lost the war that didn't bend to Celestia's will fled to the depths of the sea where their fates remained a mystery. And before you ask, yes, Nibelung died, okay? Apep is the only confirmed being who was around during that ancient war that's still around today. So it could be that one of the Sovereigns simply told Neuvillette? But even he seemed really reluctant on wanting to go visit fellow Sovereigns because he stated it could be volatile and he doesn't know what to expect. And no, I don't think Focalors would have given him the information, given I highly doubt even the gods know about this. Hell, Venti doesn't even know where the Abyss Mage comes from, let alone that the first usurper exists. None of the gods know who the unknown goddess is, despite her most certainly being a shade of the Primordial one. So, I'm truly at a loss as to how he has this information. Moving on to the second part of the statement, he says part of the dragon's powers were sealed and used as a basis for the Archon's authority, obviously referencing the Gnosises. As we know, the Tsaritsa is currently out catching all the Gnosises like Pokeballs, and we never really knew why, and we still don't, but this does give us a little clue. For the Gnosis to contain the elemental powers of the Seven Sovereigns, there must be a considerable amount in there. According to Neuvillette, it's the difference between his current state and full dragonhood. As such, he states he cannot stop the prophecy lest the Gnosis is given to him. He does, however, state that given the current status, it seems unlikely. It's an interesting concept, returning the Hydro Sovereign's powers back to him. Makes you question how it could be done. The Gnosis appears to be a glass object with the power flowing inside of it, so the logical answer would appear to be to break it. However, Nahida suggested that breaking open a Gnosis could awaken the heavenly principles. While she later admitted that she doesn't actually know what will happen if she breaks a Gnosis, I would imagine Celestia would not be content with returning the ancient power of a Hydro Sovereign to one of their greatest adversaries. Also, with the Tsaritsa collecting all the Gnosises, she's in turn collecting the powers of the ancient sovereigns, but it makes you wonder, if there's enough power in the Gnosises to help her wage a war against the Divine, then why was the power even kept, or let alone given to anyone? Why not just keep it for yourself unless there's some fundamental reason that this power is out and about? Lastly, Neuvillette saying the phrase given the status quo in reference to him possibly attaining the Gnosis feels like all but an assurance that the Primordial One defeated the second who came in that second war. That, and the Primordial One and the Heavenly Principles are one and the same entity. The winner of the war between the Primordial One and the second one is unknown. However, the people of Ankonomiya thought the Primordial One was victorious due to them still being trapped under the surface. Get fucked, nerds. But something about this bothers me, because Neuvillette called the Primordial One the first usurper, indicating there could be other usurpers. So for instance, what could have happened was the Primordial One usurped the Sovereigns and created the human and heaven realm. But then the second who came usurped the Primordial One, obtaining control of the heavens. But who knows? I personally lean towards the Primordial One winning the war only because it makes the skies are fake thing a lot easier to explain, whereas if the second who came is the current ruler, then I have no idea what the hell's going on.